Bobby Rahal. He didn't look like a race car driver, but looks can be deceiving.
Bobby Rahal is the winner. Look at him, he raises both hands off the steering wheel in a bold move.
Road courses, ovals, it didn't matter. He mastered them, and then mastered the biggest race of all.
Bobby Rahal charges down the inside, and Rahal comes past Kevin Kogan.
Wayne Sweeney holds a checkered flag for the 1986 Indianapolis 500 champion, Bobby Rahal.
He traded his racing suit for a business suit with the same results.
Buddy Rice has won the Indy 500.
Danica Patrick leading the Indianapolis 500.
SportsCenter at the Indianapolis 500 looks at Bobby Rahal and his history of success on the track and off.
Welcome to SportsCenter, presented by Weber Grills at the Indianapolis 500.
We welcome you to SportsCenter at the Indianapolis 500 along with Scott Goodyear. I'm Jerry Punch, and we are pleased today to be joined by Bobby Rahal, who is just one of 7 individuals to win the Indy 500 both as a driver and an owner. Bobby, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Good to be with you, too.
You know, it's hard to believe that it has been 20 years since you drove the victory here at Indianapolis. What do you remember most about that day?
Well, the fact, number one, it was a week later. It had rained out. I think it was 3 consecutive days on the original race weekend, the official race weekend. And we all went away, came back. It was a beautiful day. Of course, for us at True Sports, our owner, mentor, the guy that was our leader, the guy that was our friend, Jim Trueman, was grievously ill. And in fact, he had just celebrated the original race was a week before his birthday, so the race actually fell on his birthday, but we knew it was going to be his last because he was on death's door. And in fact, a little over a week later, he did die. So coming into the race, we knew that this was kind of the final curtain to some extent, and I think we all just wanted to do a good job. I don't think we felt any more pressure, but we had a good race car. Qualified 4th. I think we felt good. We came back, and it just seemed like after the first weekend where the rain and it had been postponed, and finally it was delayed till the following weekend, all the pressure kind of let out of the whole place, and everybody went away, came back refreshed and ready to race.
You know, more on that triumph a little later on in the show, but let's talk about this month of May, Bobby. Considering how impressive your team has been at Indy the last 2 years, you know, how difficult a struggle has it been this month hunting for speed?
Well, it's been difficult. They changed the tire, which certainly has hurt us. Although, having said that, there are some very good teams that are right there with us. Andretti Green is really about level with us in terms of performance. I think we were just slow in responding to the new tire. I think we had a very good test here in the tire test. Danica went almost 224 by herself, literally in half a day's running. But I think maybe it was a little bit deceptive. I think maybe we thought we were closer than we were. And then, of course, Jeff had an incident early on. Buddy had his incident, and all of a sudden, this great plan that we had was changed dramatically by the confluence of all these events. So I think that we just responded a little bit late. But frankly, the Friday before qualifying, Danica had a particularly good day with Ray Lito, her engineer, and they found a lot of things on the car. And I think she and Buddy got more speed out of the cars than we had originally felt we would get.
Bobby, you have a lot of experience here. You've dealt with the highs and the lows. How do you keep your team going, both the drivers and the crew, when you're going through a situation like that?
Well, it's, you rely on your leaders in the team, whether it's the chief mechanics, whether it's the crew chief or the team manager. You rely on all those people, the engineers, to keep everybody up. I look at my role more so with the drivers. One of the days in the first week, I could tell Danica was getting a little bit frustrated with the lack of speed. And I just took her aside and I said, listen, I need you to be a leader today. I need you to be the leader of this team. And it kind of, I think, reminded her where she was, or, just the role or the importance that I place in her. And she responded, and we had a, and especially on that run up to qualifying, she really came to the party, I thought, and really, along with Buddy, really took hold of the team, and that's why I think they had such a good day on Friday. So I look at that being my primary role, and then of course, later on I sit with the leaders, the individual groups, and say, come on, you know what we need to do here. So, but it can be tough, especially when you, as you well know, you're here so long, and one day's great, and the next day's bad, and it's just it can really turn you into a head case if you're not careful.
Bobby, the season began on a down a note as you could have. How, as an owner, were you able to maintain the team's morale and focus through the tragic loss of Paul Dana at Homestead? Well,
it's tough. I mean, that's the first time that's ever happened to us, and I sure hope and pray it's the last time. I never want to go through that again. We just all sat down together, and certainly it reminds all of us of the risks. But I think everybody understands that within the team, all the guys are working there, they all understand that there are risks. And you have to be prepared for this. And not that anybody would ever hope for it or want it or anything else, but it may sound callous, or it may sound, I don't know, but you just have to keep on. I mean, you've got to keep going. And if you can't, then okay, fine, but then you need to go find a different line of business, I think. Yeah, Paul would have wanted the race and the race team to continue. He loved both. Yeah, and I think frankly, if I took any solace in what happened, is that morning I saw Paul, and he was on cloud 9. I mean, he was the highest he'd ever qualified. He told me this was the best race car he had ever had in his life. And you take some, you take some comfort in that. And tragedy, but how many people get to do what they love to do, and unfortunately there is a cost, but he was exactly where he wanted to be on that day, and boy, there's a lot to be said for that. Yeah, we'll all remember those smiles on race morning. Yeah. When we return, we'll turn back the clock and tell the courageous story of a man named Jim Truman, who helped send Bobby Rahal to victory lane here in Indianapolis. A special story on a special win as SportsCenter at the Indy 500 continues.
SportsCenter, presented by Weber Grills at the Indianapolis 500. Brought to you by Weber, making the world a better place, one grill at a time.
Sure, we're going to miss him. There's no question of that, but we won't forget him, and we're going to do the kind of job that he knew we could do. That's why we were here in the first place, and with his assistance, and even though he's not physically here with us, his spirit carries on. Well, Jim Truman was your car owner from 1981 to 1986, and how did you two first get hooked up, and what did he really mean to your early career? I first met Jim when I first started racing in SCCA races here in the Midwest. I met Jim. He was racing in the same race, different class. I had a more powerful car than he had. And, of course, I was going to university near Columbus, at Denison University, and he lived in Columbus, so we got to know each other, and he'd say, well, come on over and watch football. So I'd hang out at his house, and that's how it started. And he was my first, I'll never forget, because it was my first, quote, real sponsor. He gave me $500 to go to the Formula Atlantic race that supported the U.S. Grand Prix in '74, and that was the start of that relationship that 12 years later would mean the Indy 500. Well, Jim Truman was a mentor and a friend, and in 1986, Rahal and Truman completed one of the most touching stories in Indy 500 history. Fred Hickman takes us back to a special partnership. The thing about Jim was that kind of the relationship that you had with him, there were all kinds of different relationships at different levels. So you always kind of had your relationship varied from, like you say, from a boss to a friend to a mentor to a teacher to, just kind of was always evolving. My version of success is to see how many other people I can help be successful, and it's very gratifying.
It was a pairing of an Ohio businessman who loved racing with an Ohio driver who loved to race. In 1981, Jim Truman and Bobby Rahal came together and formed a champ car team. It didn't take long for them to win, and that first win came in their own backyard.
Bobby Rahal is the winner. Look at him, he raises both hands off the steering wheel in a bold move.
There was a lot of hype beforehand. Jim was from Cleveland. My parents were from Cleveland. I was born just outside of Cleveland in Medina. I mean, it was a local team. You know, we were the local heroes. When we won it, it was like, oh my God. You know, I mean, it was just, it exploded.
Bobby ended 1982 as Kart's Rookie of the Year and finished in the top 5 in the kart standings the following 3 seasons. But with the sweet came the bitter.
Typical Jim, you know, yeah, we knew he was sick, but of course he never let on to how sick he was. And he had colon cancer and it spread to his lungs and his liver. And I mean, he was on a very radical treatment at the time. But Jim was never a guy, you know, he don't feel sorry for him, or, you know, that's not the way he was. And certainly as it, you know, it really wasn't, his sickness really wasn't apparent to us till right towards the end.
That end was coming in 1986. With the Indy 500 approaching, Truman's cancer was terminal.
I remember sitting with him before coming to Indy that May, and you know, he didn't have to say it, and I didn't have to recognize it, but we both knew it was now or never.
There goes Kogan. He's going to try to get by Rahal. Kogan, he's got him. Yes.
I'd gotten blocked by Randy Lanier. That's how Kevin got the run at me.
A crash. Ari Lyondike
will come out.
It's Lyondike, and there will be a yellow flag.
That kind of evened the score up again, and it was, you know, it was anybody's race at that stage. And we had a very good car when we needed it at the end of the race. I made a good restart.
Bobby Rahal charges down the inside, and Rahal comes past Kevin Kogan.
Blaine Sweeney holds a checkered flag for the 1986 Indianapolis 500 champion, Bobby Rahal.
I'm almost in tears. This one's for Jim Trueman.
Just 11 days after winning the Indy 500, Jim Trueman died at the age of 52.
It's so hard to look back now and try to come up with one clear memory of it all.
Couldn't have been better. Cheers. Couldn't have been better.
The clearest feeling I have of the whole thing wasn't then. It was about 7 days later when Jim was on death's door, and I remember going to see him. It was the last time I saw him. At that point is when I really felt that we had that chance to really celebrate amongst ourselves.
Did you ever have a doubt that it would be you and Jim Trueman in the Indianapolis 500?
No, because he's the highest quality human being, and I knew that my great days would come with him.
Bobby, a very special and memorable moment for sure back in 1986.
Yeah.
You know, Jim was so well known for helping young drivers get started in their racing career. You brought along Danica and Buddy Rice. Was Jim's influence sort of playing with you when you were starting to look at drivers?
Well, I think that there's certainly, you know, obviously, as you say, he gave a lot of people support, and of course, I was so fortunate to be with him. So I think there's no question, some sense of obligation, or, you know, this is the right thing to do in, you know, in helping Danica. You know, I think I very much feel the way Jim stated that, you know, he got his satisfaction by helping other people become successful, and there's no question that I derive the same amount of satisfaction from seeing Danica do as well as she has done, or Buddy, you know, people who were basically written off by everybody else, and you know, they took that one chance and ran with it, and that's what kind of turns me on. Is I want, you know, if you're going to be given an opportunity, take it and run.
Bobby, what life lessons did you learn from Jim?
Oh boy, I think Jim was, I mean, so many, but he was a very, you know, he was a very generous guy, and I don't mean just handing money out, because you know, he was still, you know, a tough guy in that respect, but he was a big believer in people. You know, he came from a humble family, humble background, and you know, it was always great to see Red Roof Inns at the time, because these guys, most of them were boyhood friends. There were 4 or 5 principals, and they just built this thing. And you know, Jim worked hard, he played hard, and he was just a quality guy. I mean, there was you know, never any sense that of any impropriety, or of, you know, that he was genuine. There was no falseness to him whatsoever. So it's all those things, and he left a tremendous legacy. And I think you see it today, where there are even people that work for Rahal Letterman now that worked at Red Roof Inns at the time. And whenever you get Red Roof Inn people around, all they talk about is Jim. They don't talk about what each other's done. It was always about Jim. And I said, and that to me is shows the import of, you know, and the impact that he had on people's lives.
Well, what a great legacy he left. Well, he may have left the cockpit, but Bobby Rahal has stayed heavily involved in racing as an owner, along with his partner who works some late-night hours. We look at Rahal, the owner, when we return to Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
The Indianapolis 500, Sunday noon Eastern on ABC. Welcome back to SportsCenter, presented by Weber Grills at the Indianapolis 500.
Hi, welcome to Danica's life. You're going to follow me around for a little while today. We started out the day with a little mini Indy.
Danica Patrick.
Ladies and gentlemen, start your engine.
Marco, I just saw we all have weapons. Don't come near me. All right. We go slow. Make sure you pick them all up. Just kind of stick them right here. There you go. Good job. Yeah. Yeah. Way to go. We are the winners. It's always nice to have a little bit of fun before the big race, and we won, right? Yeah. Then we went to the autograph session, and it's always a lot of fun. It's nice to see who your fans are and get a chance to say hi, and I think that's a very important part of our job as drivers. So now it's off to an interview, and that's the first half of my day.
Wow, what a day. And Bobby, Danica Mania has taken on a life of its own. What has Danica Patrick brought to the IndyCar Series?
Well, a lot of people, a lot of new fans, I think brought a lot of old fans back. She's got, she really has, I think her story is so compelling, and it's brought so much interest, and, you know, people just find her, I think, irresistible in the terms of what she's doing and you know, where she is and her ability to compete against the guys on the same day at the same place.
And Bobby, you first heard of her name when she was driving go-karts in Ohio. You followed her in Formula Ford over in England, and then you hired her. How far has she come since you first brought her on the team?
Well, you know, when I met her in England, and she had been over there for a year or two, but it had been really sort of hit and miss kind of races. She was never in a full championship until she ran the first year for us in Formula Atlantic in 2003. But she's matured tremendously. You know, she always had the drive. The drive you see to compete and to succeed that's the same, if not maybe a little bit stronger. And that was always really, really strong with her. You could just see it. But now she's more mature. She's got a lot more race savvy, you know, experience. And she still has a fraction of the experience compared to most of these guys out here. But she learns very, very quickly. And last year she really impressed me with the speed at which she came to be able to deal with everything, the press, the pressure, you name it. I mean, it really impressed me.
In 2004, Bobby, you went out and hired Buddy Rice as a driver, and he goes out and wins the Indianapolis 500. What did you see in Buddy that maybe other owners didn't see?
Well, I think Buddy we'd known for some time, watched him from when he was in Formula Atlantic. Of course, we signed him as a kind of a reserve driver early on. I believe it was in 2001 or 2, I believe. And I just saw, you know, Buddy, he's obviously a very good driver. And when we look at people, you know, you look at, you know, where have they been, who are they racing for, what equipment they had, and we did the same with Michel Jourdain. As I say, people in this sport are quick to wash their hands of people. Some people mature at a different rate. Some get it real quickly. Some it takes a little bit longer. But with Buddy, you know, he was competitive. He was successful right off the bat. Then he went through a little down cycle, and everybody goes through that. And so we just liked his attitude, and there was no question that he had, again, the drive to succeed as well. So when it came time when we were looking for somebody to fill in for Kenny, it was pretty easy for us to make the decision on Buddy.
You have a very famous partner, David Letterman, who loves cars, loves the Indianapolis 500. Tell us a little bit about David, the best David Letterman story.
Well, I think the best, you know, I've known David since '86 because I was on the show the first time in '86, and I still think the best was, the year we won with Buddy. I mean, here David Letterman's the master of saying the right thing at the right time, knowing what to say. Mr. Cool, and he was just like he was speechless. I mean, he couldn't get it out. Everything was he had the wrong verb tense. It was all backwards because he was so caught up in it and so excited by it, and you really saw him. Not that he's a guarded person anyway, but I mean, it all came out, and I think he said it best when, he quit drinking 30 years ago, and he felt like he was drunk that day.
But it was fun watching him on pit road that day when Buddy Rice won the race. Well, when we return, like father, like son, a second-generation Rahal is making a name for himself behind the wheel. We'll ask the proud papa about his son Graham when SportsCenter at the Indianapolis 500 rolls on.
SportsCenter, presented by Weber Grills at the Indianapolis 500. Brought to you by Weber, making the world a better place, one grill at a time.
Bobby Rahal is about to go into the records book with a flag-to-flag win, his 21st career win, and the first win for his brand new team. Bobby Rahal has taken the win here in Detroit. Oh, look at Rahal! And I think it surprised both Michael and Rahal. The checkered flag awaits him. It's Bobby Rahal that takes the win here at Nazareth.
Well, Bobby, you've accomplished so much in your racing career. Now, as you look back at your storied career, what moment are you the most proud of?
I think in '92, when we had started our team, everybody said that you couldn't drive and own the team at the same time, and we won the championship that year. Now that's a combination of many moments, but just that accomplishment to me, as much as winning Indy was fantastic and everything else, just sort of like going against the grain and being successful at it was kind of I'm most proud of that.
Last Sunday in Monterrey, Mexico, your son Graham, 17 years old, became the youngest winner in the Champ Car Atlantic Series. What was that like for you to be there? Well,
it was great. I'm so proud of him. He did a fantastic job, and I've never been there for his first big wins in each category. In karting, I wasn't there. In Star Mazda last year in Portland, I wasn't there. So I'm beginning to think that maybe I'm a hex. Maybe I shouldn't go. But I was handling the signboard because it keeps me out of everybody's way, and he won. And it was a great victory for him, and in a tough field. So it was great.
Any plans for him to come here to the Indianapolis?
Well, I think, first off, he's only 17, so he's got a long way to go, and I think he wants to go to Europe, and he'd like to go to Formula One or try to, so I think it's time for him to go to Europe for a couple of years, and we'll see how he does there, and, who knows, but I think coming back to Indy one day will be on the agenda.
Bobby, quickly, your thoughts on your three cars and their chances to win this year's Indy 500?
It's going to be very hot. We haven't run in those conditions, so I think it's going to really throw things up for grabs come Sunday. I think both Danica and Buddy are going to be real strong. They like their race cars. Jeff Simmons, I keep saying Chris, his brother, but Jeff Simmons, he's further back in the pack. But we have good cars, and I think if he's patient will work for him. I think he can be in the top 10.
Hey, Bobby, thanks for coming by. Best of luck to Rahal Letterman in Sunday's 90th running of the Indianapolis 500. Well, it was here 20 years ago that Ohio native Bobby Rahal's professional life changed forever. In the span of a single day, he went from a regular race driver to a racing legend. With his dying car owner watching from the pits, he sailed into the lead with just 3 laps remaining. And when the checkered flag waved, yet another unforgettable Indy memory was secure.